Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Dattitude, episode number 206. We are live. It is Friday morning. As always, my friend Larry Holder from The Athletic has joined me, and we're here. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about this morning. We're going to talk about this Saints offensive coordinator search. We're going to talk about the two new hires in the NFC South for head coaches. And, of course, we're going to give you our previews and predictions for the NFC and AFC title games. One person on this panel was 4-0 last week, picking games straight up. One of us wasn't.
I guess that was me, not being.
I didn't give an answer. I didn't give any spoiler alerts. We don't know who that was yet, but we'll let them know in just a little bit as the Superdome's kind of moving around in the background back there. All right. As always, we welcome in your comments and questions. All you got to do is type it in if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You type it in. We will see it. We will most likely show it on the screen. If you type something, if you're a Yahoo, then I'm not going to show it on the screen. But otherwise, it'll be up there. Larry Holder, what is going on this morning?
Look, I will say you look at the title games, and I would be happy with whoever really wins. I think it's actually a really exciting round of playoffs we got coming. You've got, of course, really the big boys, the MVPs facing off with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson's on his way to likely winning another one. And then you've kind of got, even though the 49ers aren't exactly upstarts, but I mean, they're upstarts with Brock Purdy as their quarterback.
Right.
And then, the darlings of the Lions. And even, if you have some sort of rooting interest down here, you probably could have yourself rooting for Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn and those guys. So yeah, if there's any rooting interest, if you're just being a fan, I would just suspect it would probably be the Lions.
If you're just being a fan and you live in New Orleans and you're older than, let's say, 40 to 45ish, you're definitely not rooting for the 49ers.
You should probably remember that Joe Montana and Steve Young used to shred the Saints.
Hate those dudes. Anyway, all right, Trey Wayne is with us this morning. He says we want and need Gruden. We're going to get Trey. We're going to get into that very soon. In fact, that's probably going to be the first topic we talk about. He also says Chiefs versus Lions in the Super Bowl. Put your house on it. Look, my friend, I've been a sports betting writer for quite a while now, and I've been gambling for quite a while. I don't put my house on anything. But first of all, if I ever lost, my wife would murder me. Would be on the news because she'd kill me. Cassandra says Ravens versus Lions for the Super Bowl. I don't know. We'll see. All right, we're gonna get to the Super Bowl predictions towards the end of the show. You could say that I don't like that thought. That would be boring. Isn't the right word. I don't know. I don't like the Lions. We'll get into that later. All right, Saints OC search, Larry. I highlighted Ronald Curry because he's the one candidate from in-house for the Saints. But you see some of these other names. I think there are three guys on this list that have a real chance. Now, I'll probably be wrong. They'll pick one of the other three or someone that's not on this list. But I think for the Saints, if they're going to go outside of the building, I think Clint Kubiak makes the most sense if they're going to go outside of the building. But the way the Saints work, I think Ronald Curry is probably the favorite because they like in-house guys. That doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. I just like to get your take. And then John Gruden, to me, is an outlier. I think he presents more problems than what he would bring in. And I'm not sure that his offense, does that translate to today?
I do think, let's start with just Gruden. I don't know what he's bringing to the table. I mean, He's been out of the game for a few years. Sure, he has experience with Derek Carr, and he wants to get back into coaching. But also, if you are Dennis Allen, why would you potentially hire your replacement?
Agreed.
I mean, It happened with Dennis Allen, with Rob Ryan a couple of years ago, where Sean Payton brought in Rob's replacement right in his face. But it's not like he did that. Like Dennis would be doing this to himself. So I don't know if that would work, but I know, look, there's no doubt John would want to try to step his toe back into coaching. And this seems like the only opportunity that's even there. But do you want to put him in that position? I think that stepping outside of the building is a must. I think you need fresh eyes. That's why you could. I understand the penchant for the Saints to stay within the building. That needs to change, and I think that will change. And I do like who you're saying with Clint Kubiak. Brian Greasy, I would certainly put in there as well. He certainly played the position. He knows how offenses work. So I wouldn't discount him. But look, Jaron Johnson. Look, he was a quarterback coach for 1 year with the Texans, and they had one good year. I mean, I get it. He might be a viable candidate at some other point, but I'm sure the Saints wanted to pick his brain to see where and how he was able to make Stroud immediately good. And then Mike Sullivan, I know the Steelers are going outside the building with their coordinators, but he certainly did bring a boost to what the Steelers were doing. I can tell you they were bad, and they got Mason Rudolph to play very well.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. And doing and he was a co-coordinator, but he was the one calling the plays and in charge of the pass game when they got rid of Matt Canada. So look, to me, I'm with you in that I think if I was a Saints fan, I would be hoping for Kubiak.
And like you said, look, I hope that they're willing to go outside of the building. They've shown in the past. I mean, when you don't, I think it's been a problem. I mean, I'm not, when they promoted Dennis Allen from co-DC or whatever, and they were just trying to make a move, getting rid of Ryan and moving on, and it worked out. But I just think generally when you promote from within, more times than not, it's just not a great idea. Not in this world, not in this NFL world. I'm not saying in the real world or outside, and you're talking about, in our business or whatever. I'm just talking about in football in general. I just don't like hiring from within. I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially when you're struggling. You need a fresh set of eyes and then go outside. And to me, just the name Kubiak, that screams offense to me.
It's different, though, when you're hiring from within, when you're the Bengals and your OC gets hired to be a head coach. Brian Callahan goes to the Titans, and then they promote the quarterback coach to be the OC. Right. That makes sense. In this situation, I know they've been high on Curry, but this does not make sense. Like when things are going poorly, you need a fresh set of eyes. And for me, I just can't see that. Look, he'll be employed somewhere. He could keep his same position. He might say, well, this job, I want to go somewhere else. He's certainly you want him on your staff. He's a good asset, but I just, if you're interviewing people, and I just think there's a better candidate on this list.
I also think that, where most times it doesn't, and I've screamed this on this show, where the Saints just don't care what the fans think. I think they're getting to the point now where maybe they do care a little bit what the fans think. And I think if you go with a status quo kind of candidate, I think you're going to piss off a lot of people. I think you're going to alienate lots of fans. Now, on the grand scheme of things, is nowhere near keeping Dennis Allen and the outrage. I don't think there's going to be outrage if Ronald Curry is promoted. And he may be a great offensive coordinator someday. But it just goes to what they're trying to do is if they're going to stick with Dennis Allen, I think they need to not necessarily purge what's inside the building, but they definitely need a breath of fresh air from outside. And I don't even know if I care which one of the four it would be. I mean, Kubiak would be my choice, but if they picked any one of the other three guys, I probably wouldn't be that upset about it. I just think I agree. I just got to have some fresh air and got to have a new way of thinking and do something with the offense. And that's not even to say that they need to redo this offensive line. That's a whole nother story.
Right. And you look at any of these names and you can't get kind of mystified by a big name. Like you can't.
Right.
I know John Gruden's sitting there and look, maybe he comes in and he's great. But I just feel like for you and me, I think we're on the same page in that breath of fresh air. You need someone to come in, fresh set of eyes, see what they have. Because here's what's funny, and I don't know why I just thought of this, but if you come into the Saints situation, it is a different situation even at quarterback than just about every other team, because if you're a fresh set of eyes, are you going to have Taysom Hill taking snaps at quarterback and doing this, you could have a totally different philosophy and say, well, look, we're done with that. Throw that out the window.
Oh,
Like,
now you're
you're
going to
not
piss off Saints
married to
fans. You can't. Don't tell Saints fans you're not going to use Taysom Hill. They'll lose their minds, Larry Holder. You can't take Taysom. Not my beloved Taysom. Don't do it. Come on, man.
If Jeff Duncan were here, he might be like throwing things at me because we were always even when he's good, it's just like, okay, I get it, but he's not the second coming of like I don't know, Red Grange or anything. Like, come on, Jim Thorpe or whatever we're talking about.
Jim Thorpe.
Yes.
All right, look, I do, before we move on, I do want to talk about John Gruden a little bit more because he's obviously intriguing. My first, he has to me the most positives and the most negatives all at the same time. The most positives, obviously, you're talking about a guy who has won a Super Bowl, has been a head coach in the National Football League, has worked for some of the greatest coaching minds in the NFL in recent history.
He's molded some of the greatest coaching minds.
Absolutely.
Sean Payton. Sean Payton is on the Gruden tree. Like, there you go. Sean Payton got so much from Gruden.
I mean, and that's all positives. But to me, the negatives, and the number one negative is obvious. I mean, all the controversy going around with Gruden, already Saints fans think the NFL hate them, right? So if you bring in a guy like John Gruden, whether they hate him or not, now they're really going to hate him. Like, there's no question. You know, you're going to bring in John Gruden. Oh, you're going to bring in John Gruden. Okay, I got something for you. So that's number one. Number two is, what is the locker room? What would the locker room think of this? Would you get the approval of a locker room? Because to me, that would be the most important thing. Because if the locker room wasn't on board, I'm talking about offense and defense, even though he has nothing to do with defense. I think you got to get everybody on board if you're bringing in a guy like Gruden. Cam Jordan has to say, in my opinion, Cam Jordan has to say, this is okay with me. He would have to talk to the defense, and he would have to come out and say on social media and say publicly that we're okay with this, number two. And then number three is, how does his offense of 10, 20, I heard this, and this great point, and how does his offense of 10, 20 years ago, I think Arlen Gillen said it, how does that equate to today? We've already seen Sean Payton's offense maybe doesn't work as well today as it worked 10, 20 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. So that would worry me as well.
Well, your 3 bullet points, the fans are last. So the perception of this and league hates the Saints, I couldn't care less about that. And if you're the Saints, you shouldn't care less about that. So what? But number one is the locker room. I mean, I don't care if he's got the greatest scheme, if he's the greatest coach in the history of the planet. It's if people can be okay with what John Gruden referred to in emails that were made public about a large demographic that is in the locker room. Of course, that's African-American players. Yep. And that is something that is different with each individual person in there. And can people move past that? Are they okay with that? That is definitely an answer I don't know the answer to. And I'm pretty sure the Saints aren't going out and taking a poll of the players to see if that's okay. I mean, you mentioned Cam Jordan. Demario Davis is certainly he might be even higher than he'd probably be those two guys. You'd have to get that would be
100%. I didn't leave him out. It was an accident that
I know you were just talking about the longest tenured guy. I get it. But it's certainly something that you need to see if that is okay. And I don't know how you totally do that. And that's John Gruden is going to face that wherever he goes, period. And then comes the offensive scheme. Certainly you can evolve. Look, Sean Payton has evolved and even evolved as a offensive coordinator while he's with the Saints. Like, he evolved with the pieces that he had at the time. And it's like, when Jimmy Graham was there, they used Jimmy Graham. And when that shifted away and they didn't have a great tight end, they shifted to other things. And then when they had 2 good running backs, they shifted to that. So, like, to be great for a long period of time, you got to evolve. Now, was Gruden great offensively for a long period of time? I'd probably say not as much as, say, someone like Sean Payton. So can Gruden evolve? I mean, that's the thing. Like the NFL part of it, that's just window dressing. That should
I
play
don't know,
no
man. Look,
involvement.
I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm really not.
Don't say but then. You're going to say but.
I am going to say but. But or however, I just this is a different animal, man. It's one thing when you bring him in to be a consultant, and the fact that they brought him in now multiple times to be a quote unquote consultant kind of tells me that I think the players probably are okay with it. I don't think you try it once, you see what happens. If they're not okay with it, you find out that they're not okay with it, right? They brought him in again. So that tells me that the locker room probably is okay with it. But when you're talking about this league, I just don't know, man. I don't know how much you want to rock a boat. And that is like, because if you bring him in to be OC, you're telling the world we're willing to make him a head coach again too. Because I agree with you 100%. If Dennis Allen brings this guy in, you're potentially bringing in your replacement, because I don't know how many people out there who have a right frame of. I've seen a lot of people taking up for Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael this week. Where were y'all like a month ago? Get the hell out of here. If you're taking up for Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael, you were silent as a dead tree frog until about 2 weeks ago. So hush. But I will say I don't think there's going to be a lot of hush if John Gruden's hired. I think.
Well, think of it in these terms. You know how with Sean Payton, whenever they hired Rob Ryan and Greg Williams, how much of those cameras follow those guys?
Yep.
You think Dennis Allen better not have an ego, because
I don't think he does.
No one is going to be panning to him to see how he's reacting.
But is it his decision, though?
But here's the thing. If it works, he doesn't get fired.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, he gets fired. And that's just up to the Saints.
But he's going to get fired anyway, though. I think
he knows,
though.
If they win 11 games. No. If they win 11 games next year, he's not getting fired.
Oh, 100%.
He's not getting fired.
No, I agree. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to get fired, you're going to get fired. Who cares who your replacement is? I mean,
right.
I've been, I'm not going to mention any names, but I've been part of a group, I guess, that has hired people who worked for me in a sense, and then 2 people in particular, 3 people that worked for me, then later on became my boss at some point. So, but what I'm saying is, I don't know that Dennis Allen, this is really his decision. I'm sure he has input, but in the grand scheme of things, and when you look back on, I guess my point is, when I look back on it, I'm like, well, I was going to get it fired or let go or whatever you want to call it. No matter what, who cares? What difference does it make who takes over for you?
Well, that's true. And I think that's why I think he's certainly a viable candidate. I'm not saying we're not don't get me wrong. And probably you're saying the same thing. We're saying the person you and me would probably prefer, not who maybe the Saints would prefer. So that's
100%.
That is a different conversation. And that's why I think, look, Gruden is certainly someone that it wouldn't shock me at all if he was there. And then, like you're saying, if it works, then you ride forward and continue success. If it doesn't, then like you said, who cares who's going to be my replacement? And so, you think of it in that sense. If that's who it works and that's who they want, I mean, that's who they're going to get. And so that's, but it will certainly bring an attention to the Saints that they didn't have going into this past year. They would certainly have an attention. It wouldn't have anything to do with Dennis Allen and his job status. It would have everything to do with bringing John Gruden back to the NFL and back as an assistant, not a head coach.
I will say this. I probably wouldn't choose John Gruden, but it would have, like, if I were Dennis Allen, I probably wouldn't choose John Gruden again if it's Dennis Allen's choice. But it would have nothing to do with the fact of whether I thought he would take over for me. However, if it is Dennis Allen's choice and I were sitting there and we as a group thought that John Gruden was the best chance for this team to go forward and be a better team and have a chance to win the division next year, and that was the best chance we had, I wouldn't even be thinking about that. I'd be like, bring in John Gruden. Let's do it. Let's move on. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. But I don't think you can worry about who's going to be the next Saints head coach because, look, let's be real. What's the percentage of people out there? You can type it in if you want. What's the percentage of people who really think that this time next year Dennis Allen's still going to be the head coach of this franchise? I think it's got to be less than 50%.
I was going to say less than 50%. But yeah,
I think less than 50%.
And look, here's the thing: if anybody knows Derek Carr, it's John Gruden. I mean, he knows his strengths.
Right. We didn't even bring up that part.
He knows his weaknesses. None of these other guys do. And Derek played better with Gruden than without him.
That's right. And
it matters.
Look, if you're trying to get better, what needs to improve, I think, more than anything, and I know the numbers will tell you that they were both about the same. Neither one of them were great. The defense definitely went down this year. The offense was better than people give it credit for, but it's got to get better. You got to get an offensive line, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Derek Carr could be – I thought he was good, not great. I know most people don't agree with that. They're like, he sucked. I think Derek Carr was good, not great, but I think he could be really good with John Gruden. But that's not enough to sway me into thinking that's what I want.
I think Carr was average in terms of NFL
That's
quarterbacks, but at times was good, at times was bad. But I think he was an average NFL quarterback, and that's the results. How he was exactly how the team finished. Like they were in lockstep together, and that's what we have now.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but if you look at his stats, the three worst games he played were when he shouldn't have been playing. He was injured in 3 games this year where he just shouldn't have been playing. They should have started Jameis Winston. That's a whole different story. If you take those 3 games out, he was definitely better than average. You look at passer rate, and as it was with those 3 games in there, passer rating wise, I believe he was the 11th or 12th best quarterback in the NFL. And guess what? Salary wise, he's the 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, which means he played exactly like he was supposed to play.
Man, if the team was so emboldened, they should have just removed Derek Carr, picked him up and put him on the sideline and brought Jameis in. Like, it's a team decision. They should have just done that, right?
Yeah, they should have. 100%. I mean, we don't want a quarterback controversy. God forbid. And
here's what's funny. I bet you the fans would be okay with that. If they would have picked up hurt Derek Carr, put him on the sideline and put Jameis, it would have been the same thing.
It's interesting. And again, we're getting off on a tangent here.
I'm just totally having fun.
I will tell you, man, I have never seen anything like and look, there you go. It happens every single time you mention the name Jameis Winston. I know you can't see the numbers of people watching, but the numbers plummet. They go straight. Whenever you mention the name Jameis, it is unreal. It is incredible. If I ever want people to stop watching the show, I'm just going to go Jameis Winston, Jameis Winston, Jameis Winston. It's incredible. It boggles the mind. Okay, you can come back now. We're going to stop talking about Jameis Winston. I promise. Come on back now. All right, we're going to talk about the hires of 2 NFC South teams have new coaches. I don't understand either one of them. To me, Raheem Morris is Dennis Allen in a new color. He's wearing red now. Okay, he goes from blue, Rams blue, to red. It doesn't make one bit of difference. He's Dennis Allen. And then Dave Canales. Who the hell is Dave Canales? Are they crazy? What is wrong with this division?
I will say the Raheem Morris, I didn't even think of it in those terms, but it is like hiring Dennis Allen. It's the same path. Didn't cut it as a head coach, went off, had success as a defensive coordinator, made his hay, got really, highly talked about by Sean McVay, and then he came back. And it's definitely an interesting hire, especially given
they could have hired whoever they wanted. Larry.
They said no to Bill Belichick. They
could have hired whoever they wanted.
Yeah, they
had the pick of the litter.
They decided not to hire him. I mean, look. I know Harbaugh interviewed the Chargers. That was to me a no-brainer. So, but yeah, the Raheem Morris thing is definitely one. Well, they know him, and that's another Dennis Allen aspect that they know him, and so they liked him.
They interviewed him when they were talking to Arthur Smith.
Right.
So they didn't want to hire him when they were talking to Arthur Smith. They hired Arthur Smith. who may be one of the worst coaches in the last 10 years in the National Football League. I'm not exaggerating. He was awful.
They should have just got Dan Quinn back, right? Should have just hired
that's
him.
Worse.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn.
But no, the more
28-3.
I will say that, I mean, spin control here. I mean, you didn't go with Bill Belichick, and you brought back Raheem Morris,
or Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, right, and Mike Vrabel. But Raheem Morris was the interim coach when they fired Dan Quinn, and was only 4-7. And so, I mean, this is definitely a curious hire. Now, Dave Canales, I can let me move on to that one unless you wanted to keep.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so Dave Canales, 1 year as a play caller,
1 year,
1 year as an offensive coordinator. But here's what was going on. The Panthers wanted someone with an offensive mind. They knew Ben Johnson was not going to be there for them. He's going to go to Washington more than likely. Money. Well, or better situation. He see Ben Johnson might be like, Washington's going to pay me way more, and I'm going to go basically. I'm not going to get quarterback number 1, but I'll get quarterback number 2 in the draft, and we can mold and go from there. And they have better pieces, say, on the perimeters, like wide receiver wise, and Brian Robinson. Like, they got better pieces offensively. So that's probably what Ben Johnson would be thinking. But also what the Panthers are thinking is that Canales helped revive 2 careers at quarterback. He helped revive Geno Smith with Seattle, and he helped revive Baker Mayfield. So they're thinking, wow, if he could do that with these guys, why can't he do it with Bryce Young? And to me, that's probably number 1 on the list why they did this.
Then pay him a ton of money and make him your OC and say, whatever you're making in Tampa Bay, we'll give you 80% more.
The Bucs would have blocked that. They wouldn't have been able to do that. You're not going to make a lateral move. Like, that's,
you know what,
the only way that happened, and it actually ties into Atlanta. Atlanta let Ryan Nielsen interview to make a lateral move because they knew they were going to hire a defensive guy. Obviously, whether it was Belichick or Morris or Vrabel, like, all these are defensive guys. Like, they allowed Ryan Nielsen to interview and get the job with the Jaguars, a lateral move, because they were going to move on from him. Canales, there's no way he was making a lateral move. The Bucs would have blocked that.
I hear you, but I mean, just come on, man. You're talking about it. You just failed miserably with Frank Reich. He didn't even make it through a season. And there you know, and before that, you probably had a good coach in your building with Steve Wilks, and you let him go. I think Steve Wilks is going to be a good head coach, in my opinion. We'll see. But so now you bring in someone that basically has no experience. I mean, I don't think you can afford, if you're the Panthers, again, I'm sitting here in front of a camera in my home office, talking about a multi-million-dollar decision. But are you really going to make this decision after what you've been through just because you hope your quote-unquote franchise quarterback, you can make him better? Or what about the rest of your team?
Well, think of it in this way. Who wants to coach for Tepper? That's another question. Like, you're not hearing all these big candidates. No, they're having to go get young guys.
Maybe they don't want to go work for Tepper.
No question. They've seen what happened. Every coach gets fired in season. Like,
you got a point.
He's throwing water in the crowd. He's throwing water at people. He's doing the opposite of what Jason Kelce does. He jumps out shirtless and drinks with them. He doesn't throw stuff at them. So totally different. Look, no one you had to go.
You got a point.
For Carolina, you have to reach for.
All right, I never thought about that aspect of it, but I always say, people say, well, who would want that job? And I'm like, lots of people.
Right.
I'm talking about it. There's only 32 of these jobs in the world. So I mean, lots of people would want the job. But then again, you say lots of people, but really, like, do you really mean lots of people when you're talking about working for a David Tepper? I don't know. You got a great point.
It's the same thing with Dennis Allen. Like, he wasn't probably sought after too highly as when he went to go coach with the Raiders. But guess what? It's an opportunity, and it's with the Raiders. And so they only have 32 of them, and he went and took it.
Yeah.
If you're in that position, you got to go take it.
I don't disagree. But to me, you should learn from your past mistakes. And to me, neither the Falcons nor the Panthers are learning from any mistakes, especially the Panthers. I mean, at least Raheem Morris, to me, is an incredible defensive mind. So I'll give him that. But I mean, why do you want, if you're the Falcons and you have the choices of all these coaches, if you're going to go with a retread, why wouldn't you want the greatest, potentially, possibly the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League, or a guy in Mike Vrabel, to me, that did more with nothing? Because other than Derrick Henry, Mike Vrabel had a whole lot of nothing in Tennessee throughout his career.
Right.
And
yeah.
either one of those guys, I mean, again, you're talking about Raheem Morris. He's Dennis Allen in just a different uniform.
There's definitely was concern, though. I could tell you just by our reporting over at The Athletic that Bill Belichick, you can't, like, you bring him in and he's going to expect to run the building
and let him.
And well, they don't want to let him. Like, that's the thing.
That's dumb.
Well, I guess they trust Terry Fontenot more than they would with Belichick. It's not like Belichick has been great with personnel decisions lately. Actually, the Falcons have done better with getting good personnel, and they made it work on defense. Their defense got better. Their offense has some good personnel, except at quarterback, and the offense didn't work, and that's on coaching. So they trust the personnel department far more than they're trusting the coaching. And so, they know
personnel
Morris.
Department made a really good decision with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke, didn't they? Woo! What a job those guys did.
I mean, that wasn't great, but hey, they wanted Deshaun Watson. They lost him. They wanted him.
So did the Saints, and it ended up working out okay.
Now it's Joe Flacco for life in Cleveland. Let's do it.
Man, what a mess that all is. All right, well, look, you know what? I like Raheem Morris. I think he's a great defensive coach, but you couldn't root for him when he was the Tampa Bay coach. Not rooting for him now. I hope he ends up, when he leaves Atlanta, he goes off and becomes coach somewhere else in the AFC and gets a third shot and does great. But not now. I don't think any Saints fans are really going to be rooting for him now. But again, I don't get that hire. I don't have to. I just think it's the Falcons being the Falcons. Arthur Blank is proven he doesn't know how to hire a coach to save his life. I mean, think of some of the coaches this team's had. I mean, to me, Mike Smith, oh, really? And then Arthur Smith? I mean, guys, the two of the worst coaches in the last 20 years have coached for the Atlanta Falcons. And Dan Quinn.
How are you forgetting about Bobby Petrino?
Oh, God, I don't know. Because I tried to put him out. I mean, wow. I mean, this franchise is like the Saints of the 70s.
I mean, Bobby Petrino left before the season was over, and he left Post-it notes in the lockers.
All you need now is
Joe
John
Horn. Joe Horn has told me those stories.
John North and Ernie Hefferly. And I mean, that's what you're bringing back notions of back here. All right, let's move on. We've been talking about this long enough. We got to get to the championship games, the penultimate weekend of NFL football, and it's always kind of bittersweet to me because I think we've got two decent. We got one really, really good game, and one. Well, we'll see what we have there in just a moment. But when you look at these championship games, I find them interesting for their own accounts. In the NFC, does the Detroit? I've been saying this over and over again, and I mean it. Doesn't the Detroit Lions? Did they remind you of the 2006 Saints a little bit?
Absolutely. Someone brought that up to me recently, and absolutely, it does. They've kind of gotten it together, and they're the darling of the team. And you think, all right, now like the Saints had to go to Chicago, now the Lions have to go to the 49ers, and now the 49ers, I think they're a better team than Chicago.
Rex Grossman, Brock Purdy.
Yeah, Brock Purdy detractors aside, y'all are idiots. Brock Purdy has been elite. I mean, I'm sorry.
Agree more.
You don't agree?
No, I couldn't agree more.
Oh, okay,
110%.
Trust me, I write about Brock Purdy like every week because I write about quarterbacks.
I think Brock Purdy is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right. I don't want to hear about the system. Watch him play. Like he knows what he's doing. And he's got, again, I'm not calling them this, but
he's got it.
Yeah. Greg Cosell from NFL Matchup from ESPN and NFL Films for so long. He was telling me even a year before Purdy entered the draft, he's like, he's got Drew Brees qualities, this, that, and the other. And he's like, look, don't jump to that. But then you see him in the NFL, he does have Brees qualities. Like, he doesn't have a rocket arm. He knows what's going on. He timing, like, it's very.
You just can't play in the rain.
Well, who can? Like, that's the thing. But also, he struggled against the Ravens, which that'll be tough in the Super Bowl to see if he can kind of rebound from that. But yeah, like, anyway, going back to it, I do agree. Like, the Lions are that like new place in the new show popping up. But look, could they upset them? Maybe. But yeah, I'm with you that the Lions do remind me of that.
While we're on the NFC, I'd like to get your take on Dan Campbell, obviously a former Saints assistant. Beloved, there's going to be a lot of Saints fans rooting for the Lions because of him. Again, the older Saints fans will be rooting for the Lions because they hate the 49ers just like they hate the Rams. They were in the same division back in the day. Younger fans still have a hard time believing that the Saints were in the NFC West for most of our lives. But what do you think of Dan Campbell? He's become the number one analytics coach. I'm going to tell you, I'm not a fan of the way he coaches. I know that the younger fans like that, going for two when you don't need to be going for two, going for it on fourth down half the time, going for it on fourth down from your own side of the field. Maybe I'm old and I'm sounding like get off my lawn, dude, but I just don't like the way this guy coaches, and I don't think in the long run it's going to be successful.
It might not be, but it's working right now. So you got to ride the lightning. And well, here's the thing. What happens after this year when you're going to lose at least one assistant? And, Aaron Glenn could
lose more than one. Exactly.
Aaron Glenn could still be in the market for a head coach. And
he should be.
Right. I think if he does, he should be a head coach.
100%. Aaron Glenn deserves a chance over a guy like Raheem Morris, in my opinion. But that's a whole nother story.
I wouldn't argue there either, and not just because I know Aaron Glenn far more than I know Raheem Morris, but I think I'd be with you. But still, can he rebound from that? Like after this year, like let's see where that goes. And but still, like they have a lot of good pieces. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, he definitely. Sometimes it's like he's trying to outsmart himself. We all know about the penalty and all that brouhaha and all this, but still, it's working right now. So, I mean, I'm not going to question it totally, but yeah, how much long-term viability? I think that's a fair question.
So what happened in Philadelphia when he lost his coordinators didn't work out so well. I mean, talk about how things can go south quickly. It went south in Philadelphia in a hurry. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen in Detroit. I'm just not a fan of he seems like he coaches almost angry and pissed off at the world. Like, I got something to show you, buddy. I'm going to go for it on fourth down and 3 from my own 47. Well, it just makes you dumb. That doesn't make you
sometimes it makes you smart.
Coach. No, it doesn't. I don't care if you – a lot of times I'm like, I'll sit in front of my TV and say, I don't care whether he makes this or not. This is stupid. Going for 2 from the 7-yard line. Down 14, you score a touchdown. And the whole new thing of don't get me started. I mean, I'm promise I'm not going to go on a tangent, but I am going to say it. When you go for 2, when you score a touchdown down 14 and you're down 8, Zach Ewing can piss off, and everybody else who thinks that you should go for 2 there, you're a moron. I don't care what any percentage tells you. To me, if you don't get it, you're screwed because it's going to be way harder if you do score the touchdown. And I've seen it work. I get that it works sometimes. Doesn't mean you're smart for doing it. I said I wasn't going to go off on a tangent. You
did.
I just did. I just went off on a tangent. Well, that's better than trying trigonometry, which is really where tangent comes from. But I don't know.
Sounds like you and me trying to decipher a fantasy baseball trade that we'll probably be making in a couple months.
Yeah, let's just do it because we don't have anything better to do.
Right.
And this is great.
Let's go for it just to show them.
Exactly. We'll show them. We haven't made a trade in 2 whole months. All right. Let's move on. We talked. We're gonna give our predictions in just a minute. I find that an interesting matchup, though, in the NFC. Also, I'll tell you who I like and why in just a moment. But in the AFC, man, you're talking about the MVP of this season against, to me, the perennial MVP as long as he plays this game. Patrick Mahomes against Lamar Jackson. I mean, how much more intrigue could you have than that?
You wonder if the NFL wanted to flip the timing of those games, but I guess one's
Yeah.
West Coast, so they got to. So I get it,
Right.
but still, one is definitely the prime matchup. And look, Patrick Mahomes, statistically speaking, whether it's traditional rates or advanced rates that we like to use over at the Athletic, well, I personally like to use, he's had his worst year of his career. Now, is that all on him? No. Like,
No.
his weapons are terrible. Like the fact that Marcus Valdez-Scantling actually caught passes last week, I was shocked. Like deep balls,
Like,
I said, "Oh
tough,
my god!"
tough catches too.
He finally did it. Like
I know.
finally, and Kelsey finally getting
know.
back into it. So, is it too little, too late going against the Ravens, who, of course, great defense for sure. But look, Lamar Jackson, and it's funny because his rates in some of those categories aren't great, but the last 3 games he's been incredible. I mean, he's been amazing, and he's been good all year, and now he's like ascending. Like that's incredible to say. And also, big factor that I think people need to look at going into this game, that it looks like Mark Andrews is going to play. And they haven't had him for a couple months. And the Ravens have only gotten better seemingly without him, which is crazy.
That's because Isaiah Likely, I think, has gotten way better. There might not be a tight end who's improved in this game this year more than Isaiah Likely.
Oh, absolutely. It's given him an opportunity. So that means you could put both those guys in the field at the same time, mix and match, and you feel great. And so that's like.
What are you talking about, man? The Lions got Zach Ertz.
He's not quite like Sam Laporta, but yeah. So. Am I making a prediction or am I just prognosticating?
Well, now let's get to the predictions portion of this segment. We can go as short or as long as you want. Let's start. We were just talking about the AFC. Let's stick with the AFC. Give me your thoughts on that game. Last week, I would tell you, I forgot to tell you earlier, I was going to tease into it. One of us went 4-0. That would be me. One of us went 3-1. That would be you. I will say this, though. You and I we don't agree a lot on picks, but we've been pretty close this whole playoffs. That first weekend, we were 5 out of 6, and the one we were off on, you were right. And so last week we were 3 out of 4, and the one we were off on, I was right. So here we get a chance to break the tie. We'll see. I got a feeling you're going to go in a different direction than me in the AFC.
Well, man, I took the Texans last week on a whim. That whim, like, if I bet my house, I'd be homeless. Like, and everyone could like throw stuff at me. So yeah, so that was just maybe wishful thinking.
You look like a genius at halftime.
It's true, but not so much afterwards. But I am going to go chalk in the AFC. I'm going to take the Ravens. I just think they're going to bring too much on both sides of the football. Like, I know the Chiefs' offense. When it's great, but it's not been great. And I think even though the Chiefs defense, they're certainly been playing very, very well throughout most of the year. I think the Ravens can bring too much, and Lamar Jackson has just been playing too well, and they're going to be in their own place. Now, the pressure's all on them. Like, if they lose, they're chokers. They had lined up waiting for them. But I think big win last week. I think they're going to beat the Chiefs.
Anybody who's listened or watched me over the past couple of years knows that I'm a big trends guy. I follow trends way more than I follow my gut. And trends, every trend in this game points to Baltimore not only winning but covering the 4-point spread. Can't do it. I'm not betting. I'm not betting against God, man. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is God. I get Lamar Jackson has played much better. And, people say he can't play in the playoffs. Well, he proved differently last week. But I don't know how much I'm buying into a second-half performance against the Houston Texans, who weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs in the first place. So I'm just having a hard time buying into the Ravens. Look, the last time a 3 seed made it to the Super Bowl, here's a trend for you. A 3 seed hasn't made it to the Super Bowl since the 2007 Colts won the damn thing the year before. That. Yeah, I mean, so it's been a long time for 3 seed. We got 2 of them in the playoffs this year. I just can't bet against Mahomes. I can't do it. And look, not only that, you look at, like you said, I think the offense of the Ravens and the offense of the Chiefs, pretty much what and what. You could make it a point, even though the numbers say that the Chiefs defense is better than the Ravens defense. You could make a point that the Ravens defense has been playing better lately. The Ravens have been home for a month. Is a big deal. The Chiefs have one less day off, and they got to go on the road. There are all sorts of things that point to the Baltimore Ravens win this game. But again, it's number 15, man, and that's all I need. And if you're giving me a pick, if you're making me pick, I'm taking the Chiefs. So there you go.
I don't blame you at all there. Like that, Mahomes is enough to pick it every week till he retires. Like, I get it.
Yeah, prove me wrong.
Right.
Yeah, prove me wrong.
That's what I did last week. Lamar Jackson proved me wrong, and well, he emphatically did. But still,
yeah, there's no question about that. All right, the NFC, I think we're going to be in agreement. So we're in disagreement. You got the Ravens, I got the Chiefs. We'll see how that goes. Wouldn't surprise me either way, by the way. If Lamar Jackson wins this game and goes on to win the Super Bowl, wouldn't be surprised one bit. We'll see how that works out. NFC, Lions and Niners. I'm going to go first here. We talked about it. I think that Brock Purdy is so underrated. Give me Brock Purdy over a Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen, to me, you want to talk about overrated. This guy comes in, looks great until that last drive when he has to have it. Can't beat Patrick Mahomes, throwing balls at receivers' feet, making poor decisions instead of taking the easy first downs and running the clock out, and at worst, kicking a field goal with no time left. Oh, no. You're trying to throw it deep and making this big, I don't know, just a huge mistake. Brock Purdy is not doing that. He showed last week just the opposite. He played awful for 3 quarters, and when he absolutely needed to, he came and had the drive when he needed to. And I think that he has one of the best games of his short career. I think the Niners don't just win this game. I think they blow the Lions off the field. I think they win by 3 touchdowns.
Woo, 3 touchdowns. Okay. Well, look, I am going 49ers, and a lot of what you say, like I followed Brock Purdy like extremely closely the entire season. And he has been great outside of like 3 games. Like great outside of like 3 games. But last week was not his best game. But the fact, I think it was huge that he was able to overcome it. Tough conditions, a pesky team, got the win. And it also does help that he's got weapons. Now, I'm curious to see about Deebo Samuel. Also, they overcame that injury. Like, you game planned with Deebo Samuel. This week, you have a sense you can game plan without him, so it's different. Like, the fact that they won because Deebo Samuel is a huge part of what they do. And the fact that they overcame that on the fly without him, I think that says a lot as well. So they know what they have going into this. And so I do think, though, that look, the 49ers, I think it's they're ready for the moment. I don't know if Detroit's ready for this moment. So I'm going to go 49ers here.
If you had to pick, that spread is 7.5. They are begging you. And I mean begging you to take the Lions. Las Vegas is. If you had to go with the spread, do the Saints, did the 49ers win by more than 7.5 points?
I think the 49ers cover. Yeah,
okay.
I'm with you. I'm not saying 3 touchdowns, but I think they cover.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an ugly championship. And I'm with you, man. I wish that I get why the Niners are on the West Coast, but I wish these games were in reverse. I wish the Lions-Niners game was first and the Chiefs. I mean, not only that, give Swifty more time to get to the AFC game, you know. All this talk about if the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, you know, she's got a concert in Tokyo on February the 10th, which is the night that is on Endymion Saturday, by the way.
Oh.
She's got they don't know how she's gonna get back in time. Jeff Haspel says Baltimore wins it all. He hopes the Saints pick Kubiak. You and me both, Jeff. I hope that's the Saints pick.
Both are viable. I would agree there. Both are viable.
All right. Well, programming note before we go off the air, I am going to be sub-hosting a radio show on Nash 106.1 for Eric Asher, my friend Eric Asher, and just goes, you know, just by chance, Larry Holder is a regular Monday guest on Eric's show, so we're not going to change it. Larry's going to come on the show.
Just by chance.
Just by chance. 5:30, and we'll get to talk about how right we were or how wrong we were or whatever it is, and We'll give early talk about the Super Bowl 58. Hot. God, we're old.
You got to do LVIII.
LVIII. We're about to do next year in New Orleans. I mean, what a better place to have Super Bowl LIX than New Orleans. I mean, really?
That sounds like a radio station, WLIX.
WLIX.
Yeah,
We're on
exactly.
the air.
Oh,
So
but
anyway.
don't forget, I am predicting a rematch of the Blackout Super Bowl.
That's right.
Beyonce.
The last time the Niners and Ravens played in New Orleans. Maybe they'll play in New Orleans next year.
They played in that stadium in the background of you. And it was and people like here's what's funny. It's totally crazy note. So I did like a national radio hit the next morning, Fox Sports Radio, and they asked me if there was concern in the dome that it was like a terrorist attack, that the lights went out. And it's the first time I'd ever even thought of it covering the thing that night. The
you
night
started
before.
getting scared, though, didn't you?
I was like, what? I was like, no. New Orleans ineptitude, man. Not what terrorism. No.
It was LP and L. Oh, I mean
Entergy.
LP and L.
Yeah, going back to when the 80s.
The green trucks, baby. Green trucks. People out there know what I'm talking about with the green trucks. All right. Well, Larry's going to be on the show with me on Monday afternoon on 106.1 if you're in the New Orleans area. If you're not and you want to listen to it, I know there's a way to do it online. I just don't know how to do that. And you're more than welcome to call into the show and actually talk to us and not just leave comments. You're more than welcome to do that Monday afternoon. I'm also going to have Doug Mouton's going to be on with me. And he doesn't know it yet, but Zach Ewing's going to be on with me. We're going to talk about some of the betting.
He doesn't know it yet.
He doesn't know it yet, but he's going to do it. The betting aspect of it. Larry, I will talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend, my friend.
All right, buddy. You too. I'll talk to you then.
And a reminder for everyone out there, when we're done here, I'm going to go add my monologue onto the show. And you can find it wherever you find your podcast. Search for Dattitude. You'll be more than happy that you did. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy the games. Talk to you on Monday. And again, next Friday here on Dattitude.